So based on the observations that we had before, we're defining inequality as a difference between the log of average income minus the average of log income. And to calculate this average, we're going to use the quantiles that we have on GDP per capita, so that we have on income per head. Yeah, so our phi I is actually going to be 0.2, and we're going to be summing over 5 categories for each of these quantiles. Yeah, so this is the inequality measure that we're going to use, and we're going to introduce this into our data frame. So first we're going to define the income quantiles as a list. So that's going to be YQU1, quantile 2, quantile 3, quantile 4, and quantile 5. Now I'm going to define this new variable inequality. And we're going to say this is going to be equal to, so first we're going to program this one here. So it's the NP log of data frame income quantiles, where I take the mean, because I have 5 columns. So if I take the mean of these 5 columns, it basically makes sure that this weight phi I here is 0.2. And I take the mean across columns. Yeah, so what I'm doing here, as you can see with my with the parentheses, I'm taking the log of this average income. So now I'm going to subtract from that NP log df income quantiles, and now I'm going to the outside of these parentheses. So just to be sure, these are these parentheses, and here I'm going to take the mean across the columns, x is equal to 1. Yeah, so now I will add a new column to my data frame, and I call this column in the data frame inequality, and it's going to be equal to this new variable that I just defined, inequality. And then actually we don't need the income quantiles anymore, so here I'm going to drop this list, income quantiles. I'm going to drop the columns, so x is equal to 1, and in place is equal to true. So let's see whether we didn't make any mistakes. Actually we did, so we get an error. So what is the problem? I misspelled the 5th quantile. Yep, so it's a typo here. So get rid of that, run it again. Oh, there's another mistake. Yep, so I wrote x here, should be x is equal to 1. And now it worked. Yeah, so now we've added this new column inequality to our data frame. So that's the first step that we need to do. Then the second step is we're going to have to deal with these missing variables, as we saw before. So for some of the variables we don't have a value. And there are 2 ways to deal with it, and here I'm going to use the wrong way to deal with it. Oops. So here I'm going to define a new data frame, which I call df small, because I'm going to drop some things. And from df, I'm going to drop everything that is not a number. Yeah, so that's the function drop and a. Oops, that's the wrong. I need to do this. And then if I look at this new data frame. As you can see, for each of the variables I now have 350 observations. Yeah, so I have 350 observations for each of the variables that we have, because there are no difference anymore, because all the non-availables, the NaNs, so they're not the numbers, they've been dropped. So all my rows are filled, so there are no missing values anymore in any row. So each of these variables now has the same number of observations, 350. Yeah, so again, this is actually the wrong way to do it, but this is the simplest way to do it, and we'll do this first, and later on we'll use the Bayesian way to do it, in which we don't have to throw away any rows of our data frame. And you can also see that now we have this new column inequality that we just defined before. Then the final thing that we need to do before we can actually start running our Bayesian model is to standardize our data. Yeah, so we run this little code block. So here we define, so again this f is my editor's way of fancy representing def, as you would when you define a function. So we define the function standardize, which is a function of x, and what it does is that it takes x, which is an array, minus the mean of that array and divided by the standard deviation of that array. Yeah, so we normalize all our variables to have mean 0 and standard deviation 1. So we create this variable log mortality. That's the variable that we're going to explain. So that's a variable that we want to explain with our Bayesian model. We're going to have log GDP, so GDP per capita. Our new variable inequality, we standardize that as well. We standardize the percentage of people with a high body mass index, percent of people that smoke and that binge drink at least once a month, if I remember correctly. And I'm going to define a Boolean variable gender, which is 1 when the column sex is equal to f for female. Yeah, so we need this dummy later on when we specify our model.